This week on the show, Allan and I have gotten a lot more sleep since AsiaBSDCon, which is excellent since there's a lot more news to cover. That plus our interview with Ports security team member Mark Felder. So keep it tuned to BSD Now, the place to be, SD. BSD Now, episode 134, marking up the Ports tree, recorded March 24th, 2016. Hey, I'm your host, Chris Moore.
And I'm Alan Jude.
Yeah, we're glad to have you guys with us this week. So, we've slept a little bit, which is awesome. And Alan, your voice sounds...
back to normal, yes, which is nice.
So, we apologize. It was a little short and brief last week, but wow, we were both pretty wasted still at that point from AsiaBSDCon and all the awesomeness that was. And I mean, heck, I just started sleeping again like yesterday. So I don't know about you, Alan. When did you get over your cold?
Oh, well, yeah. I slept quite a bit, but it was all sapped by the cold, so it wasn't very effective. And I finally started feeling better on Monday.
Oh, wow.
So a week with that was terrible.
That's what happens on these big trips. It's like you need another week just to recover from it.
Yep.
But we did, and we're back. And, of course, there is a lot of news to get to, and we have an exciting show coming up. So stick around for that and the interview and full Beastie Bits, the whole 9 yards. Matter of fact, heck, we still got a ton of questions to get to that we won't even get to this week. So keep them all coming in. That's great, and we'll get to them as we can. But let's dive right in today because there's a lot on our plate. So first up, the big news, FreeNAS 9.10 has dropped.
Yes.
So we have a link to the announcement on the FreeNAS site there. Mm-hmm. So what is 9.10, you ask? Well, okay, we'll just break it down this way. 9.10 is basically FreeNAS 9, so it's user interface, but now based on FreeBSD 10.3 RC3.
Yep.
It's a huge number of...
Threes. Oh.
All the stuff in between.
Sorry, your voice cut out there.
Oh, my voice cut out. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Yep.
But anyway,
so it's a FreeBSD or FreeNAS 9.3, but the underlying OS has been forward ported to FreeBSD 10.3. But it keeps the same middleware and GUI and all the things that everybody's used to. So it takes your FreeNAS 9 and supercharges it with the faster FreeBSD 10.3. So you get all the latest ZFS features and everything, but hopefully it gives them a bit more time before they bring out the new GUI, right?
That's right, before the real new 10 drops, which might be 11 at that point. Who knows? We'll see how that works. But speaking of the new release, though, there are some new features aside from just the update to FreeBSD 10. So first up is directory services. You can now connect to large Active Directory domains with cache disabled. So that's a goodie. Reporting, they have added the ability to send collect D data over to a remote graphite server. So if you have one of those around, that could come in handy. Let's see, hardware support, of course. I mean, jumping up to 10.3, there's probably going to be a whole slew of new things, but some of the highlights, they've added support for the Intel i219V and the i219-LM gigabit Ethernet chipset.
Yeah, so if you have a new Skylake motherboard, it almost guaranteed to have one of those two Ethernet drivers. So switching to 10.3 so that you have support for the newer Skylake hardware is really nice.
Yeah, that's going to be really important as people are starting to build these new little FreeNAS boxes and whatnot. Network support's kind of important in a NAS. Of course, improved support for USB devices, for example, network adapters. So maybe you're building something small and that's the only way you can do it is with a dongle or whatever. You can now do that properly with USB. USB 3.0 devices are now supported. So actually, that kind of makes sense now because like if I had a little 3.0 dongle now, I could do that on a FreeNAS box. Yep. So that's really cool. You'll need to check that out. Let's see. So, of course, it's a NAS, so file sharing. What do we got here? We have a Samba. It looks like Samba's been updated from 4.1 to 4.3.4. So, big bump there. Yep. And I'm sure that brings in a whole slew of new features. We have added GUI feature to allow NFS v3-like ownership using NFS v4.
Yeah. Okay. So, if you want to use v4, but you like the simple mechanisms from v3, you can do that now.
Okay, that's really cool. I like that. And, of course, various bug fixes relating to updating to FreeBSD 10 are included. For ports, they upgraded all the ports that they build off of to follow the FreeBSD 2016 Quarter 1 branch. So they have definitely made a big jump up there. As far as jails go, if you build a jail on your FreeNAS 9.10 box, they now default to a FreeBSD 10.3 RC2 based world template. So you're able to pull in newer 10 packages.
But if you're upgrading an existing system, it will keep using the existing jails you have to avoid breaking things.
That's right. So you can still keep using your old 9.3 templates. So just a heads up, maybe you want to upgrade those at some point, put it on the list in case you need to jump to 10 world for some reason in the jail. But if not, just keep on trucking with what you got.
And I guess we're kind of just adding it at the end here as a footnote, but the feature most people have been waiting for on their FreeNAS for quite a long time, Beehive. There's no GUI for it, but they've bundled IOHive into the FreeNAS, and now that it's based on 10, it has all the latest Beehive.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Including the stuff to run Windows.
That's right. So now you can definitely use IOHive. So if you open up a shell prompt into your FreeNAS box, VMs are now very possible. Man, yeah, I like IOHive. We're using it here for some different things. So it's cool, and that will definitely make it a lot easier for you to remotely do that, fetching ISOs and provisioning and all that. So check it out today. I mean, this sounds like quite a nice new release. And of course, provide any feedback to the FreeNAS team if you find any bugs or problems or anything from the update. Of course, get in touch with them so they can get it fixed right away.
Yeah, but I can think of a lot of people that have wanted to run some kind of VM on there. They have their FreeNAS as like the only server in their house, and they'd like to do a couple other things with it.
Yeah, so that'll definitely open that up as a possibility for a lot of people now. I mean, in addition to the newer jails, but then also having VMs are great.
Yep.
Okay, so there's a lot there. So, of course, I'm sure there'll be more information about that coming out in the near future, and we'll probably see other dot releases of that happen. But at the moment, grab the new hotness. Okay, so our next story here under the category of where the heck did this come from? We have the first beta release of Ubuntu BSD. So I saw, earlier this week, Monday or something, somebody posted that in one of our PCBSD channels, and we thought it was like an early April Fool's joke.
That's what I thought.
It's not. It's legit. It's a real thing. So specifically, it's Ubuntu, but it's respun to use the FreeBSD kernel and ZFS natively, which I wonder if that was the driving motivation behind this was we want ZFS natively in the kernel.
The Debian K FreeBSD project existed for years, but it always suffered from not enough developers working on it. So it's just weird to see this kind of come out of nowhere and kind of revive it, but go even further with it.
So unfortunately, we don't have a super lot of details about it because there's only a SourceForge page that we've really found so far, and even the website just kind of points you right back at SourceForge. But looking at some of the information up on that page, we gather that it does have a nice text-based installer, which supports ZFS configuration and setting up like iSCSI volumes and whatnot right out of the box. So that looks kind of cool. And aside from that, it also includes the XFCE desktop out of box, but it claims to be suitable for both desktops and servers alike right now. So maybe you can try it on a few different things. So we will, of course, keep an eye on this just because this is weird and different, and we'll see what comes of it, if anything.
The weird thing is, having the GNU userland, I'm not sure I see the advantage, mostly because most of your applications are not you're not going to be able to just run random Ubuntu applications stock on top of this because they'll expect a Linux kernel, not a FreeBSD kernel.
I was wondering about that. So is it actually running Linux binaries on a FreeBSD kernel using Linux compat, or are they compiling it using apt or
I know for the Debian K FreeBSD thing, it was specifically compiled for the FreeBSD kernel versions of the binaries. And in that case, it's like, well, I'm not sure I see the point.
Well, you have basically your own alternate ports infrastructure and package infrastructure to build.
Right. So you don't get the advantages of Ubuntu having all the applications and things just, even commercial stuff, they bundle it and it's like, here's the instructions for Ubuntu, because those won't just work on Ubuntu BSD. And then, you're not getting all the advantages of BSD, only some of them. And it's just like, it just seems like you'd be stuck in this weird in-between state of it's...
I was
kind of FreeBSD, but
works. X packages, and then you have the FreeBSD kernel, which has different support for DRMs. Like, how does that work?
Yeah.
So anyway, obviously, me and Allan have not run this yet, so we're not quite sure how it all works on the ins and outs. So I figured we'd put the call out to you. If any of you guys out in the audience have tried this and have already played with it, maybe drop us a line.
Or can
let
explain
us know how it works. Explain to us
why
how
someone
it's built,
might
or
want
if you're a developer of it, come on the show and tell us what exactly you're trying to achieve and how it works, and also all the mechanics behind the scenes. but I would be curious to hear because that is an interesting idea. Okay, so of course we'll keep up to date with that down the road if some new stuff comes out and bring that to you as soon as we hear it. So the next story here, we have FreeBSD, a lesson in poor defaults, which an interesting title, and of course more interesting considering it's written by our former producer on the show, TJ.
I'm not sure why it won't load on this. It's loaded on my other computer fine.
Oh, okay. Well, you want to go through and tell us about
it? Well, it's hosted on OpenBSD, so that's probably why it's not working. Exactly.
Hilarious.
Okay. So yeah, it's this giant
up here
text document. Let me see if I can. 1 second.
Well, you got your notes here if you can't.
Yeah, but I think I can.
If the server crashed from the load. Wow, well, he's looking it up. So basically, just short summary, what happened was our former producer wrote a post detailing some of the defaults he would change on a fresh FreeBSD installation. So Allan's trying to fetch the cached version of that somewhere maybe right now. I guess you want to read through it live?
Yeah, well, I just figure that would be...
I don't know. You got a page and a half of notes here.
I do, and so it helps if I could show what they were. He was talking about.
But yeah, I can't connect to the site either.
Yeah.
TJ, your server crashed. Hopefully this wasn't hosted on your new FreeBSD system with the defaults, and we'll say it's an OpenBSD box, just to give you guys crap.
Yeah.
No go of being able to fetch it.
I think I got it. There it goes.
Aha. Okay.
Cache. Cache is good.
Yes, cache for the win.
Okay, yes. So, like we were saying, this is, TJ being an OpenBSD fanboy, basically. But it says it's talking about what defaults he would change, but a bunch of it isn't defaults that he would change or doesn't propose a solution. But anyway, there's some good points in here and some things we'd like to talk about. So, he's broken it down into 12 sections. First with a bit of an intro, and then talking about OpenSSH, mail servers, firewalls, ports and packages, NTP, sysctl, periodic, SSL, swap, permissions, rc.conf, and closing notes. The first one about OpenSSH is one of the more contentious issues, I think. He says that FreeBSD has a history of making interesting choices with regards to versions of SSH that they bundle in the base system. And then they say often deliberately going against upstream in the name of retaining backwards compatibility or to gain perceived performance improvements. So part of that is the ABI rules in FreeBSD mean that the ABI that we ship in FreeBSD 10.0 stays the same through the entire 10 series. So that means that just because upstream OpenSSH has decided to remove support for DSA keys and AES CBC means that we can't just take those away as someone doing an if you're just a user doing an update from FreeBSD 10.2 to 10.3, you're not going to expect things to change drastically or your SSH key to stop being accepted, or your
that kind of a POLA violation for us.
Exactly.
At that point.
And the other disabling AES CBC is especially on some embedded systems. That's the only one that they have hardware acceleration for, right? Because you can do AES and I offload, and for certain embedded devices, like the performance of the CPU is very low, right? Because maybe it's a router or something. If it doesn't have that crypto offload, it'll be so slow it won't be usable. And so if you force to change everybody to like Cha-Cha 20, which happens to actually not be very fast, you could make the device not work anymore. And that's not something somebody expects when they're upgrading a minor version. Yeah. So while we will take stock OpenSSH for FreeBSD 11, the version we backport into FreeBSD 10.3 can't just drastically change a bunch of the defaults. And, that's a lot of work for the FreeBSD security team. But they don't do it for fun or because they want to, violate anybody's security. They do it because they don't want users to be surprised by all of a sudden things that worked fine stopped working when I upgraded.
Yeah. Security updates are nice, but security updates that effectively brick your system where you can't get into them,
Yeah,
bad.
exactly.
Like,
And that's one of the biggest things is making sure we don't lock people out of their machines.
sure.
Now the HPN patches, he's talking about, OpenSSH increased the channel limit to make this faster. It's like, well, they did like 8 years after the HPN patches first came out. You can't just claim, you should have never integrated those patches because 5 years after you did, we made this other improvement. And the HPN patches actually do make a big difference. There's just a bug that makes them not work quite correctly on FreeBSD currently. And so they've been removed from the base system, but are still available in the port. But I'm hoping to find and fix the bug and make it work properly again. And then maybe I can get them reintegrated. Because for doing ZFS replication over SSH, it makes a big difference. And then there's talk about the Nun cipher changes. And, in the little notes here, it talks about how, the Nun cipher is just a tool to allow a user to shoot themselves in the foot or whatever. But that's not really the case.
It's a tool different. That's all.
Well, I've tried to explain to people from OpenSSH and OpenBSD that the Nun cipher cannot be used to allow a user to shoot themselves in the foot. It's very specific in there that when you connect, you do the authentication, and that's still encrypted. That is never not encrypted. Then, only if it's a non-interactive session for copying files, just bulk data transfer, then it can switch to the Nun cipher. Only if you've specifically enabled it. And when you specifically enable it, a bunch of giant warnings pop out at you. But the code is such that it's impossible to get an interactive session with no encryption. So you can never get an actual shell with no encryption because then people could see the commands and the passwords you type and so on, and that would be bad. It doesn't allow that. It only works for the one specific thing it works for.
SFTP,
yes,
folks, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, or specifically ZFS tunneled over SSH. And, there are lots of people, the Nun cipher doesn't improve performance that much. It's like, well, it actually does. I did a bunch of testing with 10 gig and with transferring files over loopback and so on. And the Cha-Cha 20 Poly 1305 cipher, which they claim is fast, is 1.3 gigabits per second. And then the CPU is maxed out.
Sure.
With AES-NI, you can get much better speed from AES. If you use AES 128 or 256 GCM, you can get about 5 gigabits per second. This is about half your 10 gigabit network. That's pretty good per transfer. Obviously it's only using one core. Now, if you use the Nun cipher, you can get at least 6.3 gigabits per second. Although, as the article mentions, the limitation there is actually the MAC protocol, the message authentication codes that's still being done to make sure the data doesn't get munged during transit. Although for ZFS, I don't necessarily need that either. But, and so, maybe in general, it doesn't, 5 gigabits versus 6.3 is not that big of a difference. Well, if you're transferring 10 terabytes over the LAN, that's an hour difference.
Yeah.
I like my hours. I would love to have an hour back.
Yeah, that's right. And there are people who transfer that much amount of data. This is not like some not real world situation where nobody would ever transfer that much. No, that happens in production and enterprise.
Yes. And then, some of the other ones integrating with PAM is a bad idea. It's like, that's depends if you want a useful system or not. There have been 2 security advisors about it, and okay, that happens. It doesn't mean that the amount of usefulness you got out of PAM is counteracted by those 2 specific advisories. Coming up, we'll have a whole interview about a book written about things you can do with PAM. And I'm sure that there'll be plenty of useful things in there that you might want to do that you'll rather have PAM than not, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, isn't that how you do your 2-factor authentication stuff too, with the Google plugin?
Pretty sure.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other stuff.
I use it.
Yeah. So there's that. Then we go on to the mailer stuff. And TJ says here, FreeBSD includes SendMail in the base system and enables it by default. Well, not entirely enabled. Obviously, it listens only on localhost, and it's just set up to take mail that gets submitted and deliver it for the daily and weekly reports. Or if you have a web server and, maybe the website sends some email, you would like that to work out of the box rather than not, right?
Yeah. It should go somewhere,
Yes.
right?
He says he stops all the related services because it makes startups slower, only if your DNS doesn't work. And he likes as few things running in the background as possible. It's like, well, sure, but that's a personal preference.
Yeah, I understand.
Right. But and then the lines to disable send mail are in the rc.conf section later in the document or whatever. He says, if you actually run a mail server, there are better options like Postfix or OpenSMTPD and so on. Yeah, but we're not going to integrate Postfix into the base system, are we? So,
No.
and you can disable the send mail, but having a mail server by default is kind of important. And if you only need to send mail to a third-party provider like Gmail, SSMTP is a lightweight alternative, I guess. But, there's work going on to integrate the Dragonfly mail agent, but it has a few problems that haven't been sorted out yet.
Sure.
The firewall section, I'm not sure exactly what he's on about because he talks about, pick whatever firewall you want and doesn't seem to suggest changing any of the defaults.
Okay.
So I'm not sure how that fits in this argument about defaults. But anyway. Then for ports and packages, he compares PKG, the port system, and using something like Poudre or Synth. He says, packages are fast and have little effort, but the cons are no flexibility and options. Although I don't know that the OpenBSD one has any more flexibility with options.
Sure.
And he says you must wait for the project to rebuild or update things. It's like, again, that same applies to OpenBSD, except for I don't even know if they do that.
Or any BSD.
But
for that
in
matter.
particular, FreeBSD does it every 2 or 3 days now. It's not like it's once a month or something. It's every couple of days. He says for ports, you have good customization, control dependencies, and choose what you want and so on. And updates are available as soon as they're committed from SVN. And you only have to rebuild what you actually want to update. He says cons is it can take a long time to compile things. And there are multiple tools involved, like using PortSnap or SVN and PortsMaster and Port Upgrade and so on. But his big complaint is that ports and packages do a lot of things as root. It's like, well, installing the software kind of requires that.
Yes and no. Yeah.
I could understand maybe a privilege separation to do the downloading phase of PKG as a different user, but I'm not sure it's really worth that complexity. Honestly.
Yeah, I'm not sure quite that buys you. Maybe.
I suppose if there was a problem in libfetch, or if the website you were connecting to download the packages was malicious, it might send you something malicious. But, yeah, I don't know. But for compiling ports, he says fetching and updating the ports tree is done as root. Fetching the software source code is done as root. Not all of that has to be done as root. You can use the ports tree as a regular user. And, when you do make fetch, as long as the dist files directory is writable by you, you can do the downloading as a non-user user. You can even do the compiling. The only part that requires root is the installation.
Yeah, because you need to put things in the right directories.
Right, because you have to be able... And, yeah, I think if you set a prefix, you might be able to do the install as not root as well. The fact that that's not a default, it's like, well, I don't know what you want it to do. If you go to the user ports blah and go into a direct like Nginx and say make, do you want it to, sue to some magic user that's unprivileged to do the building? I don't know if there's a point in that or not. If you have an idea, maybe we'd look at that. But yes, the compiling doesn't have to be done as root.
Sure.
But I don't know that, again, that there's that big of a problem in doing that. And OpenBSD has a ports tree, right? Doesn't it work the same way?
Yeah.
I don't know. If someone could enlighten me on the differences, that'd be great, I guess.
All right, so what does he go on to next? NTPD?
Yeah. It's like, so NTPD has had a couple of vulnerabilities. And...
Well, I use OpenNTPD here.
Sure.
For PCBSD, but yeah.
I don't know exactly what the shortcomings are, but sure, And hopefully Paul Annenkamp will finish End Time D at some point, and we can just switch to that.
Sure.
But he provides a basic config file for using Open NTPD and doing the HTTP constraints thing.
See, but that doesn't seem like a default necessarily, more of a user preference thing. Because, I mean, if you want to argue, I mean, there's different things in base that, sure, we want to turn off and replace it with ports. But if we do that, then somebody's going to complain the opposite way. Well, I wanted the other one for whatever reason.
Right.
So no matter which one you pick, somebody's unhappy.
Exactly. The sysctls, he shows a list of default sysctls he changes. Some of these maybe make sense. But some of them, technically, you're violating the networking standard by doing it. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe you can, but I don't know. In the end, I don't think that enabling the TCP black hole so you don't respond with this port is closed when somebody connects to a port that's not open actually increases anybody's security. Mm-hmm. There's already a TCP rate limit for outgoing packets to prevent that being used as an attack vector. So I don't know that enabling all this black hole stuff actually helps anybody by default.
Sure.
Enabling IP random ID is maybe that's a good idea. But a couple of these other ones, like if you want the random PID base, you want that to be a different value on each computer. So how do you go about doing that?
Sure. I guess the next is some OpenSSL stuff.
Yeah. So for OpenSSL, it's like, well, first of all, until recently, there wasn't an alternative. Oh, no. So next he has periodic before we get to SSL. It says, apparently he compares FreeBSD to Windows because there's stuff running in the background periodically. It's like, well, there's a system for it, yes, and most of what runs makes sense, honestly. Apparently he doesn't like the daily security reports he gets from the server that looks for, say, new setuid files, which you wouldn't expect to find. Mm-hmm. And so, as someone who claims to be very interested in security, I'm not sure why he finds this problematic, but most of the stuff in that report is,
pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watch mine.
Yeah. Yeah. And so he talks about that, and he disables the package audit one, which actually makes the least sense to me, because package audit runs and emails you a list of all the known vulnerable packages on your system. Mm-hmm. His complaint is that it downloads the database of known vulnerable packages as root.
Oh, okay. But the package DB is owned as root.
Yes, so only root can read your package database to tell, right?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. And then, yes, so then for OpenSSL, to what end, I'm not sure, he lists every OpenSSL advisory in FreeBSD since 2001, which, well, sure, that makes OpenSSL look pretty bad. When you actually look at the fact that it's less than one screen full, it's like, turns out not all that many OpenSSL problems over the course of the time, if you really think about it. There's been quite a few more recently, but that's mostly because there have been more eyeballs on it recently.
Sure, people are actually looking at it again.
Yeah, but, obviously for a big chunk of these, OpenBSD wouldn't have been any better, and LibreSSL didn't exist. Mm-hmm. And
they can't just change it again for the 10 series.
Yes. In particular, one of his complaints and one of the points we made is that the version of OpenSSL that shipped in FreeBSD 9.0 is no longer supported. Mostly because OpenSSL arbitrarily decided to end support early because they didn't want to maintain the older version. But FreeBSD still has to support that until the end of this year. Now,
sure,
there are other people in the same situation, including Red Hat. And so the fact that it's not going to be just the FreeBSD security officer manually trying to backport these changes. There's a whole bunch of people involved, and it's not as big an onus as it sounds. But the bigger thing is that we can't just go changing the ABI, because, well, A, there's not going to be a newer release of FreeBSD 9, and B, the people running applications, you don't want them to just stop working. And so because SSL v2 was enabled back then, it can't, even though the newer versions of OpenSSL disable it, it can't just be disabled because that would change the ABI. You can't just have some ABI commands go missing, because then when you try to start a program that worked fine before you upgraded from FreeBSD 10.2 to 10.3, you don't want it to just start throwing errors and not working anymore.
That's correct.
It's kind of the downside of having to support things, which some other operating systems don't do. But, it's kind of a big deal for people that try to build appliances or who try to have a server that runs for a while. Mm-hmm. And, I don't, something may have to be done, because I don't know that any of these things like OpenSSL or OpenSSH are ever going to have a version that will work for 5 years anymore. Mm-hmm. We keep deprecating things too quickly and wanting to move on and add things and change things. And so I don't know what the right answer is.
You have to make them all packages and not part of ACE or something.
And exclude them from the ABI, sure, maybe. But how do you do that for SSH?
Yeah, that's true.
But the last thing anybody wants is to upgrade from one version from FreeBSD 11.0 to 11.1, and then SSHD breaks. Mm-hmm. or something that uses libSSH stops working.
Now, I would be one to advocate maybe we switch to LibreSSL and base, but again, I wouldn't.
But the problem with that is
maybe in 11.
Right, but if we switch to it in 11, we would be stuck with whatever version of LibreSSL came out before 11, and that would have even less backward support than OpenSSL would, because Red Hat's not also going to be having to deal with the same backporting issue and maybe be coming up with the same set of patches.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
And so there's even less support from upstream to have support for this older version. And so I think because of that, LibreSSL is a worse choice in that particular case.
Unless we make it private where we can't upgrade it. It's not part of the ABI, but again, that opens a whole other can of worms, right?
Well, then the question is, how do you say, now that we have this PAM thing and it's nice, but if you compile something for PAM from Ports that uses a different version of SSL than the private one that the PAM is linked against, and then it stops working, how do you deal with that?
That's right.
And these are not simple solutions. There's you can't just assume FreeBSD is being lazy or evil or bad because of these. These are choices that had to be made, and they're not easy, and there's not an easy solution to them.
Yeah. They're complicated engineering problems that you can't just fix in a weekend.
Yeah, you can't just say, oh, use LibreSSL instead. It's like, sure, but that doesn't actually work for 5 years. Mm-hmm. But yeah, hopefully we can come up with some kind of solution for SSL in time for 11. But, it's already a problem for 9, and it's going to be a problem for 10, because I'm sure 11x will be end of life at some point long before the 10 branch is over.
Yeah. Okay. Well, do you have anything else you wanted to add on that one here?
No, I think we've ranted about this for now. There's the swap. TJ wants encrypted swap by default. I'm not sure that that's that useful. Or if you have AES-NI, the performance impact is apparently not so bad. Although, kernel dumps don't work by default. So I don't know. If someone wants to solve that,
swap by default, but again, different target audience.
Yes, for a desktop, it makes sense. You probably don't care about kernel dumps.
Yeah, not so much.
Yeah, and there's a couple things you can do. I think you can set it up to kernel dump to the base device before the encryption, and then since the encryption will be clobbered when you crash anyway, you just write over on the raw device, and I think it doesn't get locked out by the Gedley device having exclusive access, because at this point your system is crashed and it's just doing things. So the FreeBSD installer has options to do this now. When you do a ZFS install, you just say encrypted swap yes, and it adds the .eli to the end of it, and it also has the options to mirror it for you as well. But
cool.
I'm not sure if it's actually that big of a deal. It depends what your threat vector is, right? If your threat vector isn't somebody having physical access to your machine, then it's probably not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Then he complains about default permissions on some stuff. He says, many important files are world readable by default in FreeBSD, but doesn't provide a list of which ones and what he would expect the permissions to be changed to. That one I might be interested in.
Yeah, you should. I would be curious to see that one too, because if there's something I could change here, I will.
Yeah, but you can't just lock etc because every program needs access to etc password and so on. So, it's like, sure, nobody else should have read access to the firewall rules, but FreeBSD doesn't put the firewall rules somewhere where you can read them by default anyway.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Anyway, worth looking at, I suppose, if you want.
Allan has ranted. So, in a less ranty article, we have an article here about ZFS RAID.
Not necessarily less ranty.
Capacity and integrity. So, you wrote the notes for this one too. So, tell us a little about this.
So, this is an update of an older post of the same thing, but updated now with newer versions of FreeBSD, which has newer ZFS and so on. And I think they have slightly newer hardware in this. And they did tests with up to 24 drives in ZFS and different configurations and looking at how they perform. So they compare, mirroring, stripes of mirrors, RAID Z, RAID Z2, RAID Z3, etc. So you can see they took FreeBSD 10.2, patched up to the date of the article was published. They applied their tuning and optimization settings that they have in a different page, which you can look at. But they have a single socket Xeon E5-2630, which is 6 cores, 16 gigs of RAM, an LSI disk controller, in a 4U chassis with 24 4-terabyte Western Digital disks. And they talk a bit about
all the detail of even telling you the humidity in front of the chassis and how many cubic meters of air per hour is going through the server, etc. In case you're going to replicate it, get it exactly right.
Yes, of course, all their benchmarks are based on Bonnie++, which really isn't designed to test ZFS, but okay. They noted that they turned LZ4 compression off because I think Bonnie++ writes all zeros by default. And so LZ4 will compress all that down to nothing and give you impossible speeds as a result. Because it's very easy to write all zeros to the disk. You just compress it and be like, okay, you wrote 1 million zeros. And it takes one block on the disk, right?
That's right.
And so you can do that pretty fast.
That means we win the benchmark, though, right?
Yeah. So they specifically told Bonnie to use a 16 gigabyte file, so it'd be bigger than the size of the ARC. And a few other things, but it seems they ended up setting up to do synchronous writes, which is basically the worst case scenario in ZFS.
Sure.
And then they're comparing the read, write, and rewrite speeds. And they talk a bit about the different configurations, but they show that, with just one of the 4-terabyte drives, they wrote at about 100 megabytes a second, read at 50, or rewrite at 50, and read at 200 megabytes per second. And then, when they mirrored a pair of drives together, the write and rewrite performance was the same because 2 disks acting together, you have to write to both of them, so it's about the same speed as one drive. But the read speed was more than double, which you'd expect. And then when they striped the drives together instead with no redundancy, they got more than double the write speed, 50% more rewrite speed, and about the same read speed. Because again, reading the same amount of data from using 2 platters, whether they're mirrored or not, means you get about the same speed. Anyway, then we look at some of the bigger configurations where they had 12 drives. When they mirrored into 6 sets, they got writes at 650, rewrite at 80, and a total read of just under a gigabyte a second. But they got about the same performance for 2 RAID Z2s striped together. So 2 6-drive Z2s put together. And then about the same again for RAID 5. RAID 5 is slightly faster because you have one more to the disks doing data instead of parity. When they did one big RAID Z2, the write performance was about half because the total IOPS you have is about half, right? If you have two separate VDEVs, you get twice as many IOPS as just one VDEV. But the read speed was again around a gigabyte a second. Interestingly, for their benchmark, when they bumped it up to 24 drives, so having 12 mirror sets, the write speed stayed about the same. The rewrite speed went up, but the read speed was actually lower, which suggests that might actually have been a something else being the bottleneck or some problem with the benchmark. Part of the problem was they only ran 3 tests of each one and then took the median one, where if you're going to pick the medium one, you probably want more than 3 tests to do that out of, right? You should have like
9 or 10
Yeah,
or more.
exactly. Something like mini-stat, statistically significant results. Because, if 2 are really slow and one's really fast, that probably means if the deviation between the 3 you get is not almost 0, then there's something else affecting the results.
Sure.
And so it's a little interesting, some of the results they got. Interestingly, when they went and did it with apparently having 24 SSDs, I don't know where they got 24 SSDs to do this with.
Yeah, send a few of those over here. That sounds nice.
But interestingly, they get about the same results using 4 SSDs in a RAID Z2 as they got using, 5 SSDs in a RAID Z1. They got about the same results using 17 SSDs, which very strongly suggests that the bottleneck is elsewhere. Because you'd expect a lot more performance from 17 SSDs than you would from 5.
Sure.
Or rather, you would expect not exactly the same results like they got. They also had some interesting other comparisons, including comparing just different disk controllers. And they also compared the speeds of the different compression algorithms, if you're interested in that. But not all SATA controllers are created equal. They compared the Asus Sabertooth motherboard's SATA 6 port and found, write at 40 megabytes a second, rewrite at 25, and a read at 91. When they used the Supermicro X9 SRE boards onboard SATA 3, they got about the same results as the Asus. But when they used the LSI 9265 8i controller in JBOD mode, the write speed was 130 megabytes a second instead of 30. Rewrite was about triple, and the read speed was 150 instead of 90. Now, part of that is possibly there's a cache because that's an actual RAID controller, there's a cache involved there that might have made a difference.
Sure.
Interestingly as well, it might be which features it advertises, like support for native command queuing and so on. Also, that's not the same controller that they did the previous tests with. So the tests we just talked about were all done with LSI 9207, which is a plain HBA without the RAID features. Whereas these are results from the older version of this article, where they're actually using a Mega RAID 9265, which is very different. They also compared SSDs, they connected the 256 gig SSD to the SATA 6 on the Asus motherboard and the LSI, and they found the Asus did about 240 megabytes a second writes, whereas the LSI would take 440. But the reads were about the same, just over 500 megabytes a second each. Again, it's not clear whether the drive was actually writing that fast, or if the buffer, half gig of RAM or whatever on the RAID card was just buffering some of that and making it seem faster. It can depend how much you're writing for how long you're writing if those results change.
Interesting.
But yeah, they have a bunch of other results on here. It's definitely worth taking a look at if you're interested.
Yeah, we like seeing these kind of benchmarks too. So other folks out there do more.
Yes. There's a lot of things you can do wrong with a benchmark, and I think they've done a couple of them here. But this is also, you have to decide what you're actually testing.
Sure.
And play with it.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, hey, next up, before we get to our interview, we do need to mention our first sponsor this week, which is going to be IX Systems, of course. URL for that's going to be ixsystems.com/BSDNow. But we actually have an accompanying story to go along with that this week. We have Nasandra site, or Nazandra, I'm not sure how they pronounce that, but looks like they've done a review of the IX Systems FreeNAS mini box, which if you don't have one of those, you're missing out. They're quite nice. I got one here, and I know they're teasing something new on their Twitter and Facebook about.
Yeah, it's maybe 2 weeks from now we'll hear about that.
Yeah, so there's something new coming, but meanwhile, this is for the current FreeNAS Mini that's out, and they give it quite a nice review and some good recommendations about it, so it's quite nice. They go through, of course, the different hardware that's on it, etc. Mention that it's running ECC memory, and they say from a performance point of view, I cannot but recommend the FreeNAS Mini. They said it's a superior product, able to handle pretty much anything you throw at it, so that is definitely high praise indeed.
8-core, 2.4 gigahertz CPU with ASNI and virtualization offload with only drawing 17 watts.
Yes,
Pretty hard to beat that. Plus, yes, it's a server-grade motherboard with ECC and dual server-grade NICs.
So, of course, I mean, you can pick up one of these FreeNAS Minis right now. You can grab them from Amazon. But, I mean, if they take this much time, care, and energy to put into a little mini box that sits under your, home desktop or whatever, and, you put it in the corner and never even remember that it's doing things, like, think of how much attention they'll pay to your real big iron when you need that massive system built, which we have talked about in the past.
Yeah, I've shown pictures of before.
Yeah.
I've been machine with 36 6-terabyte helium drives in it.
That's right.
They put quite a bit of care into building that for me.
That is right. So, of course, everything small to everything big and everything in between, they can do all that for you. So you should try getting in touch with IX Systems the next time you guys need to build a server or you're looking, again, to build a mini. Heck, they do desktops as well. If you need any kind of hardware and you're doing something for open source, or if you're not and you just want awesome hardware, definitely get in touch with the IX Systems guys at the website we mentioned. And, of course, the best part is tell them what you want to do first. And then based on that, they'll help you design exactly what it is you need to do exactly what it is you're trying to do. So, of course, and don't be shy. Like, mail servers, we want to do this much, or we're going to have a gazillion little files living on ZFS. Tell them all the details so they can figure out exactly what configuration is going to perform best for you. We're joined today by Mark Felder, who's a security team member of the Ports team over at FreeBSD. So, first of all, thank you for coming on the show today with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Great. Since this is your first time on the show, you get the first timer question. So tell us about yourself. What led you to becoming a BSD ports committer?
I suppose if you go back to my computing history, when I was pretty young, my uncle gave us an old computer of his. It was an 8086. Fondly remember it, 10 meg hard drive. And that kind of started me down my whole computing career path. I was just obsessed with computers ever since. No, when I was in high school, I was just super into computers, and somebody told me, "Hey, if you want to know more about computers and do something really cool, you got to learn this Linux thing, right?" And so, at that time, I had dial-up. It was terrible. Luckily, some dude on a forum was kind enough to mail me like 10 SUSE CDs so I could install it, and that really started me down the path of Linux, Unix type stuff. When I was in college, I was playing around with Gentoo. Somebody told me, "Hey, it's like the hardest one to run, besides Linux from scratch." And I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to learn it. I'm going to figure this thing out. And through that path, I managed to break my computer many times. You surprisingly learn a lot about the different parts of a modern Unix system when you're breaking it with port upgrades and whatnot. Now, while I was in college, I had a good friend of mine who we used to play video games together, and I liked playing like tactical realism shooting games. The only one that was available on Linux at the time was America's Army. It was a fun game, great game. Now, a buddy of mine had like almost identical computer hardware that I had, and he was playing on FreeBSD. Now, when the 6.0 came out and the Linux emulation, the Linux emulator, it's not really emulation, but when that came out, he was using it to play this game, and he was getting like 20 frames per second more than I was in this game, and that just blew my mind.
That's a competitive advantage too.
Well, absolutely, it's total competitive advantage. So, that really started me down the whole. Whoa, man, I got to figure out what this FreeBSD thing is. And now I didn't convert immediately, but I had a spare server, and I put it up, file server, learned the ins and outs, and that was really the start of it. Now, after college, when I was at my second job, doing mostly Solaris and Oracle admin stuff, they wanted a dev environment for their application, and all they had was like these terrible old Spark servers that were so slow you couldn't really do anything on them. Well, they happened to have this dual processor Pentium 3, and they were pretty excited about what ZFS could offer because we were playing with it on the Solaris boxes. And, that was around the time when ZFS was first really announced as like not beta anymore.
Sure.
It was probably 7.2 or something like that. So I put that on there, and their application was just like Java, and it just ran incredibly well. It ran so well on this, basically throwaway piece of hardware that we had laying around. That really started me down the path. Now, that company got bought out, and there was layoffs up here at our branch. And I happened to find another job in town at an ISP, and it said right on the on the requirements, FreeBSD. And I went, whoa. What are the chances of finding that? Because I was looking all over, couldn't find anything. Mm-hmm. Well, it turns out local ISP up here in Madison, Wisconsin, has been running FreeBSD for basically all their services since roughly 98. And so all of their internal stuff, and if any customer wants a server built and run and they have no idea what to do, they don't have sysadmins or whatever, they just throw FreeBSD on it. So there's actually a pretty large chunk of FreeBSD servers up here in Madison, Wisconsin. It's kind of amusing. Now, while working there, I got the opportunity to learn it more and play with it more. And, I kept running into things like, oh, man, we have this piece of software and we just hit this bug. And we got it from Ports, and but the latest version fixes it, and so that started me down the path of figuring out how to update Ports. The Porter's Handbook is a hugely immense, detailed, just fantastic resource. Everything you need to know in it, basically. And that kind of started me down the path. And so I spent time updating Ports and even submitting new ports for things that we were like, whoa, we want to run this, but it's not in, we don't have a package for it. So I just started creating these things. And I would say, I was about 3 years in on that job. I was there for 5 years, and I got somebody, I can't remember who, got a hold of me because I was just blowing up the Bugzilla with PRs. Well, then it was Nats, but blowing it up with PRs. And they said, hey, you want to be a Ports committer? We can get you a commit bit. We can mentor you. At that time, I was like, oh no, I don't have enough time. It was just super busy and really stressful with what I was doing. Well, about a year later, I got reapproached, and I said, yeah, let's do this. So that's really what started me down the path there, and it's been a fantastic choice for career development and everything else. I highly recommend it to anybody who's watching and just thinks that I don't know enough to do it. Well, trust me, you do know enough to do it. If you know enough to compile some stuff, you might not know all the ins and outs. If you know how to install Ports and check out the Ports tree with Subversion, whatever, you probably know enough to get down that path. Just go through the committer's handbook, the Port committer's handbook, and you'll get everything you need. Start submitting PRs. You will learn a lot. You will do a fantastic thing for the community by participating. And it'll set you down a journey that I promise you won't regret. Now, I would say, what do we got? 2 years ago now, was when I saw there was a discussion on one of the mailing lists, and it was talking about the new quarterly branches. And they were talking about manpower and some stuff wasn't getting taken care of. And I went on there and I ranted a little bit. And then I think it was Zin Lee actually asked me if I wanted to join the port security team. And I graciously accepted. So that's how I got onto that team. And while I don't have the programming background and the experience to do some of the heavy lifting things for the FreeBSD community, I can contribute in these other ways. I can keep ports up to date. I can triage bugs. I can sometimes successfully get things ported that are rather complicated. Small C patches maybe. But I think one of the most important things that I've been doing has been keeping an eye out for security vulnerabilities and getting those listed in the View XML, which is where it used to be port audit, but now it's package audit. That's what tells your system, hey, you've got these things installed. There's a known vulnerability. Please fix it. Please update it. So I participate in that as much as I can, and it's not only a benefit for my own systems and my own work that I do, but also everybody benefits. Yep. And I think that it's such a great thing to do. And along the way, I do get some kind of permissions granted to go and update things that I don't own if there's a security vulnerability. Sure. And so, if there's a vulnerability in something and nobody's taken care of it yet, I'll document it. And then I'll go and look and see what it takes to update it, to go through the changelog and see if there's any security issues or not security issues, I mean any breakage that's going to cause problems for people when they update, and just do what I can to either contact the people that need to be contacted or just try to take care of it myself if it looks harmless enough. So yeah, that's kind of how my journey went, and that's what I'm up to right now.
Okay. Yeah, so that kind of mostly answers our second question, which is what got you into ports. But the other part was what are some ports that we can blame you for?
Let's see now. I inherited Mumble, which a lot of people use. The Plex Media Server port. That's pretty popular.
That's a big one.
Yeah. After a lot of begging of Elon, the guy who started Plex, and it wasn't just me, there was quite a few people, but after enough begging a couple of years ago, he finally decided to set up a FreeBSD server and try to compile it on it and get it going. And he's had a fantastic response from the FreeBSD community.
Sure.
Especially FreeNAS. I think there's way more FreeNAS than vanilla FreeBSD because it's way easier for people to install it that way. But as he's said, I don't know if he's really said it publicly or not, but FreeBSD is a small percentage of all Plex users. But they've had a fantastic response, and they're very good at interacting with the upstream. With Plex, letting them know about bugs, just being a member of the Plex community. And I don't think that it would still be supported if there weren't enough people, buying his Plex Pass, which is kind of like the nice fancy cloud features and everything. So, hey, if you don't want it to go away, throw them a couple bucks a month or buy the lifetime pass.
Yeah, I bought a lifetime a while back.
Yeah, I got it when it was $75. And
I think that's what mine was too.
I think it's $150 now. So sorry guys, maybe he'll do a coupon someday.
Yeah, no, it's well worth it.
It's such a fantastic piece of software. Now, let's see what else we got. Okay, so I also have the Observium port, or I did. I was using that at a previous job, and I kept that thing updated. And actually, they changed to a commercial model at some point, and we're only updating the port, like the public release every 6 months. So it hasn't been a whole lot of work to keep it up to date, but I recently handed it off to someone because I didn't really have a test environment for it anymore. So I handed that off. Let's see, what else do I got? I've got Redshift, which is that thing for your desktop that changes the color of the desktop. It's like Flux. Let's see, I had Mumble, Plex. Sonar. Sonar is a rather new one, and that's kind of like a torrent Usenet type tool. It uses mono. It's pretty fantastic. I've had a lot of people contact me about that. I suppose one of my favorite ones that I maintain is called Xymon or Simon. It's a monitoring tool. It's the open source fork of, well, it was really a fork. It was a re-implementation of Big Brother in the early 2000s. It used to be called Hobbit, but they changed the name after some pressure from the Tolkien Foundation.
Somebody was unhappy.
Yeah. So I've got that one. I'm trying to think of other super popular ones. I'm trying to blank at the moment. But yeah,
Probably
I mean,
have some come to you right as we're doing other questions and stuff.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's cool though. Sounds like you have quite a handful of them.
Yeah, there's quite a few.
Okay. Well, cool. Tell us a little bit about being a ports committer. Like, what would be the responsibilities of somebody who gets their port commit bit?
The responsibility is really to do your best to stay up to date. There are people out there that have the time and the willpower to read every single commit that comes through. That's a lot of work. Ports tree moves pretty fast. That's almost a day job in itself. So I can't take credit for that. I do my best. But stay up to date on the developers' emails and try to participate. Go look at the Bugzilla. There's some nice categories on there for things that are like maintainer approved or maintainer timeout. There's a couple guys doing a lot of the triaging in there, making sure things are categorized properly. And they're doing all the heavy lifting for you. You just need to pick up the PR and give their patch or whatever a test run, and if it all looks good, help them get it committed into the ports tree.
So yeah, the main jobs are obviously maintaining some of your own ports, but integrating other people's patches from maintainers or from regular users, and getting that stuff into the ports tree so everybody can have it.
Yeah, as well as keeping an eye out for those people who display the skills and the persistence to become a ports committer. When you see those people, speak up and let people know that they're on the radar, and you may be mentoring them, or at least somebody who has time may be able to pick them up and help mentor them, because the more people we have participating, the better the entire ports tree and the FreeBSD operating system is going to be for everyone.
Yeah. So that kind of leads directly into our next question, which is, what does the mentoring process actually look like, and how does that work for someone that maybe does get approached to become a committer?
The mentorship process is it's really a case-by-case basis. There's really no set rules. It kind of goes between number of commits and the amount of time, but you really can't set a hard rule for that. The interaction with the mentee and the quality of their submissions and the different types of things they're doing. Like if they're only doing triaging of ports, that doesn't help you get a good feel for what they're doing. So if you get into a mentorship position, do a little bit of everything. Create some new ports. You're probably going to want to do a simple Python port, a Perl port, maybe a Ruby port, a couple regular C programs, because they all have their different intricacies and different requirements. And after you've done, several of those, you'll have shown enough for the mentor to assess whether or not you're ready to just, go wild on the ports tree. So I've seen anywhere from, a month to 6 months to a year, just depending on how active people are. There are mentors out there that have, been around for, maybe a year, but, they're not doing stuff every day. It's like, maybe a submission a week. And so it really just depends. But if you're active and you participate, you'll be rewarded.
Yeah, I know for me, for docs and so on, it was mostly mentored until I got to the point where the patches I was proposing didn't need any fixes before they went in.
Right, yeah. As soon as your submissions are such high quality that you don't have to, follow up with multiple revisions, that's probably a good sign that you're ready to go. Now, there are some people out there who pine for perfection. You're not going to get perfection.
Well, no.
There are very few people that are ports committers that know every single thing about the entire ports framework. So, if it works and it's not, some horribly dangerous thing, you're probably on the right track.
Yeah.
But
Cool.
And
people are kind enough to let you know if you committed something that could have been done slightly better, and you learn from your mistakes and you clean it up and you move on.
and that's a big part of the mentorship part of the thing, is that if you do commit something that's not perfect and you're under mentorship, your mentor gets the blame for it, not you.
Yes,
And
yes.
right.
Well, that's why the mentors tend to demand as much perfection as possible.
Right. It's because they're going to catch the blame for anything that goes wrong, because that's their job is to take that off of you so that you have a chance to get good at it before you start getting yelled at.
Yes,
Right.
precisely.
Well, I guess you kind of answered it then. So typically, how long does the mentorship last? You said, a month to 6 months or more?
For me, I think it was like 3 months. I mentored someone a while back, and it was like a month.
Okay.
So it really just depends.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about the port security team that you mentioned. What exactly do they do for the project?
So it's our job to do our best to stay on top of the security vulnerabilities and patches and whatnot. Sometimes there are vulnerabilities out there for software, and then like upstream doesn't release a patch, but it lands on there's like a Fedora bug that one of the Fedora developers triaged it and wrote a patch for. So just try to keep your eyes open. And I think the most important thing is just communicate. If you see something, let people know and do your best to get a suitable Vue XML entry out there, so that way at least people are warned with package audit that there's a vulnerability that they should know about. This is all volunteer. This is not something where people are getting paid to sit here and do this all day. It would, for some people, I'm sure they would love to do it. It can get tedious at times, but it's an important job, especially in the current state of the internet as a whole. We need to be as security minded as we can. So sign up to a couple of those security mailing lists, keep an eye out for things, make sure things are getting updated in the ports tree. That's kind of what I do. I read like the OSEC mailing list and full disclosure, and when I see something that I know is a FreeBSD port and not Linux specific, I go and I take a look and see if somebody's already taken care of it. If they haven't, I try to myself. And for those listeners out there, if you're kind of annoyed because you know of a security vulnerability that's not being taken care of, it's not because we are, ignoring it. We might have just missed it.
Yeah.
So please submit a bug and assign it to Ports SecTeam, and we'll all get notified, and somebody will take care of it.
Cool. So I know the ports team's been doing these new quarterly branches. Well, they've been doing them for a while now. So how successful would you say those have been?
I dog food it. So I would say that it's pretty successful. There are certain aspects that people are not happy with, and I think that over time it'll evolve and grow, and we will, we're going to strive to get perfection with it, but you're never going to get that. But the goal is for someone to be able to use the quarterly branch, which is the default when you install FreeBSD. For you to get your security updates and critical bug fixes, but not have any breakage. So you shouldn't be able to run package upgrade within one of the normal quarterlies, right? Because it is quarterly. So, come April 1st, there's going to be a ton of updates for people when the new quarterly branch gets cut. But within those quarterly time periods, you shouldn't have to fear updating your system. That's really the goal, because with a rolling release and busy sysadmins, you don't have time to keep track of everything. So you shouldn't have to worry or fear about upgrading your system, which is something that I think that people have had problems with in the past. And I think it's going pretty well. if there's an update, you shouldn't have breakage. And I cannot remember anything that has been pushed to the quarterly branch that caused huge breakage in the last year and a half, 2 years.
That's cool.
So I think it's been pretty successful.
Yeah, it's definitely nice peace of mind to be able to just do package update or package upgrade and get everything. Whereas, before it was like, well, there's a chance that some server you use has jumped major versions, and now the config file is different. And it's like, well, I didn't really want to deal with that today. I kind of wanted to plan that out. And
Exactly. And so, if you are a sysadmin somewhere running FreeBSD, it wouldn't be a bad idea to have your production servers on the quarterly branches, and maybe your dev test servers not using quarterly, using
the head,
the latest packages, because then at least you get a heads up. Yep. You get a couple months to figure out how to fix it before it lands on your production servers. Yep. So that would be a good strategy, and I definitely encourage people to not hold to one or the other if you have a large enough environment where you actually have dev test servers.
Yep. Okay. So based on an article we covered earlier on today's episode, is there any thought on making things like when you are actually just downloading fetching stuff with ports or even with package, doing that maybe as not root and more things like that, kind of privilege separation and least privilege?
Yeah. I would say that the port manager folks are really the ones looking in that direction. I don't have a whole lot of input on what they're doing with that, but I think it's a fantastic idea. I mean, we should be doing as little as possible as root. The fetching and downloading those things, and sometimes when you are going through the package install process, some things are done as root that really shouldn't be. And we need to watch our backs. So it would make sense to, install as user or whatever approach they're going for. I would like to see that. I would definitely like to see that. If somebody could put that together before 11, that'd be fantastic.
Sure.
I don't know what the roadmap on that is currently, but I love the idea.
Okay. Well, cool. So, for example, the Ports SecTeam, though, I know we've talked about the mentoring phase for the regular Ports team, but is there something similar to get on Ports Sec? Is there another proposal mentoring phase, or somebody just get promoted?
It's more like a nomination promotion type thing. Okay. In fact, if you're interested, please send an email to us and let us know. If you are a committer out there watching this and thinking, hey, I got a little free time, I could jump in on some of these security things once in a while. Please let us know. The more people we have, the better. We can't make every single person a Ports SecTeam member because it just that would never work out. But we need a healthy team of active people, and if you have some time, join us. If you only have time for the next 6 months, that's probably fine. You can let us know at the end of 6 months that you've got some real life commitments and you just can't do it anymore. But
sure.
Now Martin Wilkins came back. He's
the MeWe bot.
The MeWe bot. Yes, he's quite the ports committer. He came back and he basically said, hey, I would like to come back on Ports SecTeam, and it was just a day or two after an email, and he was just added right back on. So if you have a healthy track record and you're doing a good job as a ports committer, I don't think you're going to get denied. So if you're interested, just please let us know.
Cool.
So I know there have been some work in the past. I think Doug Erling was leading it when he was the security officer to get the CPE or Common Platform Enumeration stuff into ports, so that all the different packages will be tagged in this common format, so that they could be matched up with vulnerabilities with CVE numbers automatically and so on. Do you know how that work is going?
I think it's kind of stalled at the moment, but there's still a desire for people to at least correctly tag ports, so that way when the work is finished, we can just turn it on. Right. I think one of the struggles that needs to be sorted out is how do we handle the CPE vulnerabilities when our versions don't necessarily match upstream, right? So let's say they released, 1.2, but we fixed it in 1.1 by backporting a fix. And so you have that port revision, right? It's the underscore and then the number for the port version. CPE has no idea what that is.
Right.
So we would probably have to have the framework talk to, I think what they would end up doing is probably Vue XML would trump CPE.
Yeah, or some way of saying, while our version number isn't newer, we've solved this list of vulnerabilities or something.
Yeah, there would need to be some way so that way the CPE vulnerability doesn't keep showing up because we've already fixed it. So I don't know the status on that currently, but I think that it is the right approach. When you look at all these different operating systems, the Red Hat-based ones, Debian, Ubuntu, the other BSDs, why are we repeating all of this work?
Yeah, saying why is there FreeBSD Vue XML and then Red Hat has some other thing and so on, right?
Yeah. It doesn't make sense for there to be this redundancy. All it does is provide room for error
and more work for everyone.
Work for everyone. So if we could all agree to a common data feed for this. And maybe members of like our security team and Fedora's security team and everybody kind of participates and chimes in, and we have some way to submit changes to this feed to say, oh, hey, that entry will actually in this specific FreeBSD version it's fixed. That would be a fantastic improvement to the entire open source community.
Sure.
So I would love to see that really take off, and I'm hoping that. With the current security climate of the internet again, some people get that moving.
Yeah, but I think, like you said, a lot of the work is just actually going and tagging all 25,000 ports with the right CPE information.
Yes.
That might be a good project for someone who is new and maybe doesn't feel comfortable actually working on the mechanical parts of ports. But, if it's just a matter of, all right, this program and find it, it's basically just mechanical but can't be automated work, right?
You could probably do some of it programmatically, but the problem is that
you have to be sure it's exactly right as well, right?
Yeah, so you can get the string off of some of the data on the CVE.NIST.gov page. Like if you search for a piece of software, there's a specific string on that page that you would want to put into the port make file. You could probably programmatically do a lot of the work, but you would definitely need to create a tool that can verify it.
Yep.
I remember running into a situation where the string for Mercurial was wrong. And so I actually sent the CVE.NIST.gov, they have an email address. I contacted them about it, and they said, oh, yeah, it's going to be assigned a new string, but we're not going to have that published for like another 2 weeks. I was like, but this vulnerability already exists and you already have it listed here. And they're like, yeah, but it won't be published for another 2 weeks. So I don't know what their timeline is like and how fast they actually produce usable data on their feed. Maybe that's one of the reasons why there isn't such a huge push for everybody to adopt it, because their feed is kind of slow. But it's another problem that needs to be solved, and a discussion that needs to happen.
Yeah, and you get all kinds of fun when you, as we've started seeing, just even with the ports tree and a couple others, sometimes open source projects you end up with two different things that have the same name.
Yes.
Yeah, that's happened.
Like
ran into that the other day.
There's like a UCL thing in Linux, in some old Debian repo somewhere. This old compression library that nobody has compiled for 10 years has the same name as the configuration library in FreeBSD.
Yep. Yeah, I just ran into one the other day. I think it was FS Watch.
Yeah.
There's two different. There's two different ports now. I think I committed the other one. But there's two pieces of software with the identical name, completely different use cases. One is just a generic, let's watch some files. The other one is supposed to be like some sort of a Swiss Army knife, watch for modifications and alert me, because somebody's tampering with my system.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I've had that happen too. I don't even remember what the last one was, but something had to be moved because name conflict.
Yep.
Okay, so going back a little bit here, so red ports used to be a thing for testing port patches. So I know that's not been around for a while. Are there some plans to build something to replace it, maybe using Poudre and allowing developers that don't have their own environment to do builds like that?
There's been talk about it, but I think that it's really, I think it came down to cluster resources and time for someone to rebuild it. At the very end of its life, it was kind of in a weird situation. I think that all of the red ports stuff was actually only available over IPv6. So there was like some weird proxying and natting going on, and it was a fantastic service. When I started using and building ports and whatever, that was the coolest tool ever, because I could be like, oh, sweet, I just upload this patch and it'll test it on every build. It'll do a couple QA tests. It was fantastic. I would love to see it come back. And I don't know if anybody out there has been building it. If they have, let us know, and maybe we can figure out a way to get that booted up on the cluster so we can, provide that as a service. I would love to see that integration with Bugzilla. Somebody uploads a port patch, it should automatically be picked up by a bot, pushed to that, and come back and report whether or not it built successfully.
Safe.
That would be such a great integration. And I know people are probably thinking, well, we could probably do that with Travis and
actually, the talk at
they talk about Jenkins.
at AsiaBSDCon was integration with Fabricator and Jenkins, so that when you push the patch into Fabricator, it could fire off a Jenkins job that would run, the Poudre test port against, a bunch of predefined jails, so it's all the supported FreeBSD versions or something.
Yeah, that would be great.
But again,
too.
It's just a matter of someone having the time to actually build this, right?
Yeah. We need people to build the glue.
Yep.
The glue is the hard part. These tools exist and they're fantastic. We just need some glue.
Yeah.
And also, for people who are like, well, why don't we just use cloud services? Like I said, Travis.
Well, Travis doesn't work in FreeBSD, and after much talking, cannot be convinced to try to work with FreeBSD.
Yeah. And there's also the problem with we don't use generic cloud services for a reason. We do our best to dog food on FreeBSD as much as possible, because if we're dog fooding on FreeBSD, we're more likely to run into bugs.
Yep.
Sure.
Then they're running current on all these machines. They're going to hit
Testing
the bugs.
our own product.
Yeah, they're going to hit these bugs before it gets out to the users. And I think we do a pretty good job of that.
Yep. So I guess circling back to just regular ports again, especially thinking of some of the more well-known ports like Mumble or Plex, what are some of the most typical challenges you face in keeping something like that up to date?
I would say the challenges are when you have upstream people who don't really care about FreeBSD and they just don't really want to respond to your bug reports. It doesn't happen too often, actually. Thankfully, there's very few pieces of software that I've run across where they just completely dismissed it. In fact, I've had some challenges with Mumble specifically, and the upstream has been great. They have been very welcoming of FreeBSD, have taken my bug reports and suggestions and patch their source code to work with us right out of the box. We don't have to carry patches in the ports tree. Now for Mumble specifically, I know I've had a few people ask, oh, hey, why aren't you running the latest version? Well, at this point, we're kind of stuck. When 1.3 comes out, I'll get it in the ports tree. Don't worry about it. Well, with 1.2, I literally cannot update it any further. The reason being, a lot of their updates have been security related because they bundle OpenSSL.
No.
That does not affect us. But also, every version newer than what we currently have in the ports tree, they are bundling Qt as well. And they have backported some TLS crypto stuff from Qt5 back to Qt4 just so that way they can use it in Mumble. And we can't do that. Like, I'm not going to bundle Qt in its entirety with Mumble. It would never work right. And the KDE team would, definitely be at my door.
Yeah, I had the same problem with the Slack native desktop client. It's like they have this fork of Qt with some custom patches that they bundle with it, and it was like, holy crap, dude.
yeah, but they're only doing it as a stopgap. It was just because they wanted to enable some better crypto stuff. Unfortunately, we don't have it, but our client does work, and I wouldn't be concerned. It's not. It's nothing. It's not like we have a vulnerability by not having this.
Sure.
So I would say that that's probably one of the struggles I've run into. But like I said, Upstream's been very responsive, and I've been testing like every couple of months with their GitHub, making sure it builds right. If it doesn't build right, I send it to them. They send me a patch. It fixes it. They commit it. Everything's great. So when Mumble 1.3 finally comes out, we'll get it. Don't worry.
Cool. Yeah, I kind of wonder if there's something FreeBSD could do to help with that a bit. Like, I know the GNOME guys actually now have a FreeBSD builder in their cluster, so that every time they do a commit, it checks that it still builds on FreeBSD, and their developers get told, within a day of their commit that, hey, you broke FreeBSD. Whereas before, a new GNOME release would be built for a while and then come out, and then a couple of months later be ported to FreeBSD, and by time FreeBSD found out it didn't build, it was 6 months later and the developer wasn't working on it anymore, right?
Oh, right. Yeah. I don't know what kind of resources we can provide for everyone, but I think that there are going to be certain pieces of software that we care about enough that we'll participate. Right. I know I would participate if they were like, hey, can you help me get up a FreeBSD box and on whatever my cloud is, I would say, yeah, get me a login. I'll help you get this set up.
Yeah, well, I'm almost wondering if something almost equivalent to, kind of like the Travis CI build badge, but a FreeBSD build badge that projects could use, and maybe even on FreeBSD's infrastructure, it would just build git head of their port on FreeBSD and see if it works.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great. Cool. Yeah. That would, hey, if anybody out there has some free time,
right? There's lots of projects that need folks to take a look at it.
Yeah,
maybe over the summer.
Something kind of like, a lot of ports we have like a -devel version of the port that checks out a Git branch, but because of the way we do check something, it's always a fixed point in time that gets updated periodically. But one that would actually grab the latest and apply maybe. I don't know, but hopefully we wouldn't have local patches in this particular case, but basic stuff, and then just try to build it and kind of just give Upstream a heads up that, hey, this isn't working, but in such a way that they're not going to be annoyed by constantly getting emails about it, right? So it's how do you make it do the right thing, or the right level of verbosity.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay. Well, anything else you want to mention as we wrap up here?
I don't think so. Thanks for having me on, guys. Yes. It's been great.
Thank you.
Okay, time for the news roundup, folks. But really quick before we do that, of course, next sponsor this week, which is going to be DigitalOcean.com. And you can, of course, go ahead and get set up with a FreeBSD droplet right away. If you'd like to put OpenBSD in there, guess what? There's instructions out there on how to do that too. Dragonfly. Yep. And, if you must, they even do Linux for you. So how about that? And, of course, you can set those up in a little bit under 60 seconds, super fast. And you don't want to forget the coupon code FreeBSDNow, which gives you that $10 credit. So you can run a VM pretty much for 2 months and just try it out. No risk.
Well, and the best parts are gigabit network connection and a terabyte of data transfer included.
Yep.
Even on the cheapest
SSDs.
Yeah. And if you need more, the $10 one includes 2 terabytes.
That's right. That's right.
But one of the most popular things people do with it is make a VPN. And they have DigitalOcean, as part of its incredible series of tutorials, now has a tutorial on running OpenVPN on their FreeBSD image.
Okay.
And on top of, you can follow this along and make your VPN. But the nice thing about DigitalOcean is because they have locations all over the world, you can choose where you want your VPN to end up. Whether you want somewhere close to home for better latency, or if you want to put it further away. They have San Francisco and New York, Toronto, England, Germany, the Netherlands, Singapore, wherever you want to be.
Yeah, that's really slick. It's nice that they just offer that. And the tutorials they do, I can't stress this enough. They do some awesome tutorials out there, and they don't treat FreeBSD really like a second-class citizen when it comes to those, which is pretty nice. I know there's been times I've just been Googling random things, and a DigitalOcean tutorial comes up like, this is how you do this on FreeBSD. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's really cool that they spent the time to do that. So, I mean, if they're going to take that much time and care to make sure you have tutorials to set things up right, I imagine they're going to do a good job hosting your droplets as well.
Yeah. One of the other big differences, unlike a lot of regular tutorials or whatever, DigitalOcean has some professional copy editors that go over the tutorials and clean them up. And so you get more consistent styling and it's more well written because, you know, the person who wrote the tutorial does technical stuff and does a good job, but having someone go over it and fix typos and stuff can make a big difference and just improve the overall flow of the tutorials. It makes them a lot easier. But this goes through everything, including setting up the easy RSA keys and stuff and generating the keys for all your clients and setting it up. It's really nice.
It is very nice. So again, folks, go ahead and check that out today at DigitalOcean.com. And of course, if you talk to anyone, let them know that you heard about it here on BSD Now. We would appreciate that. Okay, so first up in the news roundup this week, we have some AsiaBSDCon follow-up here. It looks like over on undeadly.org, they've compiled a handy list of all the various OpenBSD talks and papers that were offered a few weeks ago at AsiaBSDCon. So
yeah, this is something FreeBSD should do. I guess we don't really have a blog like this, but you know, obviously the conference usually does a fairly good job of collecting all the slides and getting them posted. But you know, Undeadly does a good job after every conference, even small ones where they only send a couple developers or whatever. They get all the papers together and put them all together in a nice post like this.
Yeah, they did a very good job with this. So we have Anton Jucot, who did a OpenBSD RC.D, and we have slides and papers. Henning Brouwer, which is running an ISP on OpenBSD. Mike Belopov, implementation of Zen PV HVM drivers in OpenBSD. And Mike again on OpenBSD project status updates. Mike Larkin on OpenBSD's VMM. And then Rake Flitter, who also did OpenBSD VMD updates. So yeah, very cool. So all the talks here have the slides. Some of them have the papers attached as well, probably for the paper talks where they were given. Also, it was nice that they included the updates to VMM, which were discussed at BeehiveCon, which not officially a part of AsiaBSDCon.
Well, it was on the official events list, but yeah, it's a separate conference that just kind of lives inside.
It's a conference within a conference. It's
exactly.
But that will, of course, be interest to anybody who's a virtualization enthusiast. So you might want to check that out. That was a good
and
talk.
They were all recorded. So. And like Hiroki said, this year they had newer cameras that record directly to SD cards as MP4s. So they expect to have those videos up a lot sooner than previous years where they had to transcode them from like a tape media.
Yeah, I'm sure that was a pain. Anyway, we'll keep an eye out for that and, of course, let you know when the videos do show up. Okay, so this next article is kind of interesting. This was comparing two projects at first glance that may not be entirely related, but namely they were comparing Bitcoin and BSD, specifically development practices. So the title of the article was, it's over on bitcoinist.net, Bitcoin devs could learn a lot from BSD, which intriguing title. So the article pretty much first details some of the woes that are currently plaguing the Bitcoin development community. In case you weren't aware, there's a lot of toxic community feedback to changes, and of course you have stakeholders with vested financial interests being unable to work together towards a common development purpose. So it kind of led to some really good sections of this article kind of comparing and contrasting that development model to the BSD development model. So I want to read you a couple excerpts of that.
In particular, they're comparing to FreeBSD's idea of having a core team, then having committers, and then having a much bigger pool of contributors who, maybe can propose patches that get committed. They don't actually have write access to the repository themselves.
That's right. So the first poll quote I got here was, first and foremost, the way code is developed needs to change to stop current negative trend in Bitcoin. The FreeBSD project has a rigid internal hierarchy of people with write access to their code base, which the various Bitcoin implementations also have, but BSD does this in a way that is very open to fresh eyes on their code, allowing parallel problem solving without petty infighting that we see in Bitcoin. Anyone can propose a commit publicly to the code, make it publicly available, and democratically decide which changes end up in the code base. FreeBSD has a tiny number of core developers compared to the size of their code base, but at any point they have a huge community advancing their project without hard forks popping up at every small disagreement. Brian Armstrong commented recently on this flaw of Bitcoin development, particularly with core developers. He said, being high IQ is not enough for a team to succeed. You need to make reasonable trade-offs, collaborate, be welcoming, communicate, and be easy to work with. Any team that doesn't have this will be unable to attract top talent and will struggle in the long term. In my opinion, perhaps the biggest risk to Bitcoin right now, ironically, one of the things which helped it most in the past was Bitcoin core developers. I thought that was definitely interesting. But towards the end of the article, they had a really good summary of the culture that could be adopted also, and they summed it up this way. Another thing that Bitcoin devs can learn from BSD's community adoption of the Unix is the community adoption of the Unix design philosophy. Primarily, worse is better, the rule of diversity, and the do one thing and do it well. Worse is better emphasizes using extant functional solutions rather than making more complex ones, even if they would be more robust. The rule of diversity stresses flexibility of the program being developed, allowing for modification and different implementations without breaking. And of course, do one thing and do it well is a mantra of the BSD and Unix community that stresses modularity and progress over perfect solutions. Each of these elements help make BSD a wildly successful open source project with healthy development community and lots of inner cooperation between the different BSD systems. While this is the opposite of what we see with Bitcoin at the present, the situation is salvageable provided changes like this are made, especially by the core developers.
Yeah,
I think that was a well-written piece.
Well, I think another important thing is, the ability to survive a change of leadership. That's something a lot of it doesn't have to be open source. Any project that consists of a core group of people is, life happens, and if too many of those core people go away too close together, then if there's no model for how to deal with that, then we often see open source or other projects just die. Whereas if you have something like with FreeBSD is like, well, every 2 years we have an election out of all of the people that have right access to the repository to select the 9 people that will be the core team, and they have a nice little pyramid here showing the 9 core team members, and then there's 300 odd committers, and then the 3,000 odd contributors, people that are just are an important part of the community, but don't necessarily have right access to SVN.
Sure. Well, all in all, this was actually a really well-written and interesting take on the different aspects of the FreeBSD / quote-unquote BSD project, as they call it. And we hope that the Bitcoin devs can maybe take something useful from it down the road and help fix some of the community situation.
Yeah, well, it's just interesting to think of applying more of that model to things that aren't even necessarily related to BSD or Unix.
Right.
And it's
not even necessarily code at this point. It's just an attitude and a culture, philosophy.
Yeah, it's just the
doing development.
The kind of structured but avoiding too much bureaucracy of that came from, the project originally being a group at a university. They kind of adopted this idea of, well, we'll have this charter and we'll have these rules and we'll have teams and we'll delegate, but we also have to have a way of surviving a change of leadership and so on.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Well, again, interesting article. Maybe take the time to read it if you get a chance. It was pretty fascinating. So next up, we have FreeBSD, cross-compiling with GCC and Poudre. So, of course, cross-compiling has always been a bit of a challenge, but it has gotten easier recently using Poudre and QEMU in recent years.
Yeah, so in particular, this is building software for the Raspberry Pi, which you've been able to do, but forcing the use of GCC to compile certain ports where maybe Clang doesn't work nicely.
Yeah. So I guess the main thrust of this article here, he's talking about there's some specific ports which won't build with Clang, period, even if you're not cross-compiling natively on the Raspberry Pi. And
so I think part of it was that
some ports.
I think GCC was the default for ARM up until fairly recently when newer Clang got the ability to build on ARM. And I wonder if there's not some top-level ports framework switch to force it to GCC. I know, and that.
Well, that's what I was going to suggest here at the end. It's like his suggestion for the most part was just some creative use of adding use GCC equals yes to the ports tree or to the troublesome ports. So you would think we would just eventually end up with some sort of conditional if ARM you can use GCC or something like that.
Well, specifically he put putting use GCC in the global make.conf didn't have the desired effect, which makes sense because that particular variable doesn't work like that. But I would expect there probably is one somewhere where you would set something in it and cause it to use the GCC. In particular, I think though it's using the GCC from ports, which has some interesting effects on dependencies. Because how do you compile something that depends on GCC if you need to compile GCC first, and so on. But this tutorial walks through some of the hacking to get it working, and maybe somebody will be...
I would think some other committers need to take a look at this and go, we could probably make this a lot less painful and easier and just do the right thing, quote unquote. So that's why we wanted to bring it to your attention, and hopefully that will get somebody's attention and it'll get taken care of. All right, so what's the next one here? It looks like NVIDIA has come out with a new beta graphics driver for FreeBSD. Ooh,
in particular, it has DRM KMS.
Interesting. Okay. So this will probably work better on 11 with the new stuff that's landed, I would assume. Or how about... I'm going to have to try that. So I have some native UEFI systems where I've disabled all the legacy BIOS. So I wonder if it'll do that properly. Okay. Anyway, speculation aside, some of the important details of this one, they've also added support for the following GPUs, which is the 920MX and the 930MX. They've also added support for the Vulkan API version 1.0. That sounds cool. A couple bugs fixed. Incorrect frame rate reporting on Quadro Sync configuration when you're using multiple GPUs. They added a new R&R property, CSC matrix, which specifies a 3x4 color space conversion. Improved handling of X gamma ramp on some of the GF 119 and newer GPUs. They said on these GPUs, R&R gamma ramp is always 1024 entries, and now it applies to the cursor and VDPAU or workstation overlays, etc. Fixes bugs for and added some other new EGL extensions as well. So, okay, sounds like a decent release. Again, we'll have to try playing with that.
But yeah, I think it's the very first release that'll have the direct rendering manager kernel mode setting stuff instead of the older way of doing, and it'll be interesting to see how that develops.
Yeah, I'll have to definitely. I'm going to have to poke around with that here if I can get some free time. I need to do that, right?
As if.
I'll probably do it when it lands in port. Somebody will update the port.
Yeah, I think there is a port for the beta driver, right? Or maybe somebody will make one specifically since this is such a big change.
Yeah, this is something people may want to test out very early. So especially on 11, where the newer DRM stuff has landed, I would definitely.
Yeah, but also just making sure it doesn't not work on 10 maybe as well.
Okay, it's time to get into the beastie bits, and of course we got a lot of your comments and feedback here. But before we do it, let's mention the last sponsor this week, which is going to be Tarsnap. And of course, the URL for that, tarsnap.com/BSDNow, where again, you can go, and it seems like this is a trend here. Just a couple.
Yep, it's just a couple dollars to put in and get started, and it's easy to use.
Wasting time.
No wasting time.
It's very, very, very easy to use. He's got up there. Tarsnap's probably already available in the package system of your choice, so it's super simple to get started with. But if you're really paranoid, download the source, compile it yourself. Don't even trust those crazy package systems. I mean, binaries are for weirdos. Like, we got to compile it all ourselves. So definitely check it out. You can be sure it's doing exactly what it claims to, which is encrypt all your data safely and on your side, so you never have anything go over the wire that you'd want exposed. And of course, everything's deduplicated, so it keeps the cost way, way down, especially if you're backing up files that aren't changing a whole lot.
Yes. Also,
definitely cost effective.
While we were at AsiaBSDCon, he sneakily released Tarsnap version 1.0.37, which is now available for download. This version adds several new options, including passphrase-time option to increase security of passphrase-protected key files, along with minor bug fixes and some additional warnings about common user errors.
Well, cool. Definitely need to check that out, you guys. If you're not doing backups, don't wait until it's too late, and then you're sorry, and then you'll see us at a conference, and you'll be whining about, if I had only listened and done the backup. Like,
I had this cool patch, and I lost the code. I'm like,
As much as I love to be able to say, hey, we told you so, like, I would prefer not to have to do that. Like, just do the backup. Save us the trouble, then you don't have to be telling us the sob story. Then you can be telling us, wow, Tarsnap saved my bacon, and I was able to get all my files back. I think, what was it, last week or the week before, we had somebody who wrote in and said how they wish they had backed up more because the stuff they got back was great. But
what I forgot to back up was a couple of other files that I would like to have back too.
Right. That's right. Learn from these mistakes. We don't have to ever make these mistakes again. So go today, get set up, tarsnap.com/BSDNow. Okay, so first up in the Beastie Bits, and we'll rapid fire through these. But first up, I wanted to lead with this one. We have a new BSD users group starting. So the Tennessee Bug is starting, and the website for that is at knoxbug.org, knoxbug.org. For those who don't know, that's Knoxville, Tennessee. So I suppose within driving distance of Chattanooga, if you really wanted to, you come out from Nashville even. If it's every so often, maybe that's not a bad drive. It's a pretty drive, I'll give you that. So some of us here at the IX office out in Maryville, Tennessee will definitely go to that. It's going to be held at the Farragut Public Library. So if you don't know where that is, you're probably not from here and don't care. But anyways,
there's a Google map on the website.
There is. So we've got mailing lists are getting set up and all the information starting to land there. So please go ahead and hit the website. And there's an IRC channel. Hop on there so we can start getting people signed up and figure out who lives local and what we can do. Because I think that'll be a lot of fun. I know we've talked about this for
awesome
years.
Graphics logo thing. Did Jenny do that?
No. The fellow who set it up did
Nice.
that. So it's really good. And I love it. It looks like something you would see in like kind of a southeastern, southern. I don't know. It looks
Well,
good.
it says Knoxville, Tennessee BSD Users Group. Come for the talk, stay for the whiskey.
That's right. That's right. Well, Jack Daniels is like the state drink. So good to go. But anyway, check it out. Of course, it's on IRC, freenode.net as Knoxbug. And join us on there. I know we would love to have as many people as possible come on out. The first meeting is April 20th. So we'll definitely get that set up.
And we'll have to remind people when that date gets closer.
Yeah, I will, of course, provide feedback on that on the show here and let you know how it goes.
Look forward to seeing how it goes.
I may even have to take some pictures and put them up on Twitter. Gosh, all these things I got to do now. Anyway, we'll make sure all that happens. All right, so tell us about this next one.
Yes,
Allan.
so this is a commit to Dragonfly by Sefi, who we talked to before. He says, in order to guard against reincarnation of an accepted connection after the listen socket is closed, the accepted socket is linked to the same global local port hash list as a listen socket. However, on a busy TCP server, this could cause a lot of connections or contention on that hash list. But think about it again, as long as the listen socket is not closed, reincarnation of an accepted connection is impossible since the listen socket itself is on the global hash list. Given the above background, this commit changes where an accepted socket is linked to before the listen socket is closed. So there's a per CPU local port cache for listening sockets. Accepted sockets are listed on the listen socket per CPU local port cache instead of the global local port hash list. Before the listen socket is closed, all of the sockets on the listen sockets per CPU local port cache are merged to the global local port hash list to prevent reincarnation of these connections. This greatly reduces the total connection rate for a busy TCP server. Contention rate, going from 50,000 contentions per second to 18,000 if the number of network NIC rings does not match the number of CPUs, and it gives about a 7% performance improvement, allowing you to accept 450 connections per second, or 450,000 connections per second instead of 420. It also reduces the contention from 30,000 per second to only 800 per second if the number of NIC rings matches the number of CPUs. Although that doesn't end up giving a performance improvement, it does, prevent the contention and increase the connection rate. So this is interesting. I'm wondering if some of this might be able to be applied to FreeBSD.
That would be neat. Okay, so next up, maybe you saw this on Twitter already, maybe you haven't, but the FreeBSD Foundation introduced a new website and with that, a new logo, which was interesting. You have to take a look at that and see. So they're not completely getting rid of the Beastie in the business suit, so he will make an appearance from time to time, but, something that looks a little more enterprisey, professional, whatever you want to call it. It looks nice, though. Site looks really good. So you'll have to check that out.
Yes,
and,
the new logo also came with the whole new website.
That's right. So the new site is pretty slick. But kind of to go along with that, our producer, JT, made some new wallpapers based on the new logo. And so we have the links in the show notes here if you want to grab some shiny new FreeBSD Foundation wallpapers. In addition to that, he posted some new PCBSD and Lumina desktop wallpapers, and I have the commit here as well, where we actually added those to the Lumina project so that future versions you'll have those wallpapers out of box because they are pretty darn nice. So thank you, GT. Did a really good job getting those set up. Okay, so after that, let's see. We have some Undeadly article here talking about some IPv6 errata. So what's going on
so these are basically patches for OpenBSD. These errata patches recently issued to fix an IPv6 bug that affects OpenBSD 5.7 and 5.8. And there's also a pledge bug fixed for the upcoming 5.9 release, which I don't think is actually out yet, but they already have to fix.
That's
They
awesome.
say insufficient checks in the IPv6 socket binding and UDP IPv6 option processing allow a local user to send UDP packets with a source address already reserved by a different user. So you can send from a address and port number that somebody else is already using.
Nice. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. They say users that don't use IPv6 are not affected by this issues, but users using IPv6 should apply the patch, rebuild their kernel, and reboot. And they say, while it's not officially released yet, there's an errata patch for 5.9 to deal with incorrect path processing in the pledge_name I, which could result in unexpected program termination of pledged programs.
Okay. Very, very nice. So next up, we have some sponsoring PAM Mastery. It looks like something new here. I guess Michael did it with the other book. So same type deal, I assume?
Yep.
Get your name in the credits or
Yes, get your name in the credits for the ebook or the print version of PAM Mastery, which he's currently in the middle of writing.
Okay, very, very cool. Well, I love it. That'll be good. Okay, so next up we have a visualization of FreeBSD commits on GitHub for 2015. That looks pretty slick. I know. I always get fascinated seeing these little cool visualization things they do. This is pretty slick.
The rather poor machine that I use to do the show says your graphics card does not seem to support WebGL. I did not know that was a thing. I hadn't used a computer without a good graphics card in a while. So I can't actually show you. But if you check out the URL, it's got this great graph that you can spin and flip and do stuff with. And it shows all the commits during 2015 to the FreeBSD GitHub project, which is like 90,000 commits. And then it breaks it down by who did it and so on. And it's quite an interesting visualization to see just how busy the FreeBSD project is.
Go watch it on your own hardware. We won't let you see it here, but you can definitely watch it.
It's definitely
on your
worth
own,
checking out.
assuming You can do it. And then last up, the VAX platform is no more. Oh no. That's a moment of silence, right? Okay, that's long enough. It's gone.
So I guess mostly due to a lack of actual hardware and usefulness, I suppose, OpenBSD has deleted support for the VAX.
Interesting. Okay, well, I guess we'll put that one to bed in the history books and just leave it there. May it rest in peace.
Yep.
Okay, so time to get into the feedback and questions. So first up, we have Hunter who asks about utilities for the blind. He says, hey gang, I want to start a project that will allow blind and low vision users to get into the BSD market. I am fairly familiar with the GUI tools, Orca Screen Reader, and the magnification application in GNOME come to mind, but I am not so sure of a CLI screen reader that is up to date and usable on modern computers. I know of YSAR, and I couldn't find any documentation about it, or as a means to run it with software speech, save for a blurb about it on the SourceForge page. I don't know programming well enough to write my own solution, so now I'm stuck. Are there any utilities that I could build into an ISO to achieve my goal of getting an accessible command line installation of BSD, FreeBSD in particular? I don't want to build a GUI ISO unless I absolutely need to. My intent is to have the end user roll their own FreeBSD box and have little interference from excess utilities. Thanks for your input and have a wonderful weekend.
I don't know much about this. The thing I've heard that people have had the most success with for like command line type stuff is using the serial console. Because it actually transmits the text over it as like ASCII text. And so it's only the text going across, and it's because basically you're getting the terminal as plain text, it's easy to submit that to like a screen reader.
Yeah, I don't know if there would be something.
Although I just
all the ones I've seen have really heavy dependencies too, so you end up bringing in a lot of
like GUI type stuff in order to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like a screen reader of the output of like LS is probably not going to be very nice either, right? It's that'd be very difficult. I think for a couple of those things, you might actually be better off with a GUI that understands that this is a list of files and reads the name as you point to one rather than just reading the entire screen. But yeah, I wish there was more stuff for people like that in open source, but I don't know that there is.
If somebody out there has an idea,
Yes,
though, let us know. Pass it along.
I know I've met a couple of users that have similar disabilities, and I know that they use BSD, so maybe they have some good tips for us.
Okay.
I might have to get in touch with a couple of them and ask them, how do you deal with...
what we can shake out. Okay, well, next up is Chris. He says, good evening. I hope Japan is treating you both well. Well, it did.
Yeah.
We're back. So he says, I have a question about ZFS quotas. Mm-hmm. I have a 4 gig quota set on my home data set. I have another data set that mounts inside my home directory with a separate quota. For some reason, the second data set won't accept more than 4 gigs of data. How do I get the second data set to respect its own quota, ignore one from my home folder? Thanks, Jake. And then he provides an output of all the various ZFS data.
Okay, well, so in ZFS, there are 2 types of quotas. There's a quota, which limits how much space you can take up on the disk. And then there's a ref quota, which is a reference quota, which limits how much data you can have. But it appears... So, when you set a quota, it includes all your snapshots, all child data sets, and reservation, anything like that. When you make a ref quota, it only limits the amount of referenced files, right? So like if you look at his ZFS get all here, if you go to the little used by section here, you can see that used by snapshot 0, because he doesn't have any snapshots taken up space. Used by dataset 3.59 or 3.58 gigabytes. Used by children 0 and used by reference 0, or ref reservation. Now, so that's taking up the space. So if you made a ref quota of 4 gigabytes on the home directory, then it would only limit the home directory, but it wouldn't count any space used up by snapshots against him. So the reason why this is there in ZFS is if you set a user's home directory quota to 4 gigs, and they create 2 gigs and then a snapshot and then delete that and then create 3 gigs, they would expect that to work because they only have 3 gigs of current files. But because of the snapshot, they'd actually be trying to use 5 gigs, which would be over their quota. Right? So they're taking up more space than they're allowed. But as far as they look at the file system, like, but I only have 2 gigs of files. How can I be using 4 gigs of space? And so that's where a ref quota comes in, where you can, instead of limiting how much space they actually take up, it's how many files worth of space they can have visible at once. But so basically your problem is that your quota includes child data sets. So your 4 gig quota on the home directory is stopping home Jake downloads from getting bigger than 4 gigabytes. So change the quota, set the quota back to none for user home and set it to a ref quota of 4 gigabytes. And that will stop it from counting the sub data sets against that quota.
Cool.
But if you do want it to limit people's snapshots, then you want to use the quota instead.
Mm-hmm. Well, good deal. That was an easy solution.
Yeah. If you want to know more about quotas and ref quotas, you can buy the ZFS book from ZFS Book.
There you go. A little plug there. I love it. So next up, we have an anonymous writer who says, hey, love the show. Here. I was wondering how ton and tap works. I've been playing with OpenBSD's VMM and current. The VM machine has a VIO interface, which I assume is just like ton. It also sets up tap on the hypervisor. If I TCP dump tap, I can see ARP request packets from the VIO on the virtual machine. The problem is getting packets back through tap to VIO. So how do I set up ton tap?
So tap is a virtual Ethernet interface, whereas ton is a tunnel interface. So it's basically virtual IP. So a tap interface goes down to basically layer 2, right? Ethernet, whereas ton only goes down to layer 3. So there are no ARP packets because it only deals with IP packets. So the VIO interface that you're seeing, I have no idea what that is, and it's probably different. In general, to do Beehive, it also connects to a tap interface in a similar fashion. Usually what I do is either set it up with routing, so I give my tap interface an IP address on the host, and then an IP address, a different one, but in the same subnet in the guest, and then configure the host to route it, or I create a bridge interface and bridge the tap interface and my regular Ethernet, and then inside the VM I can run DHCP client or whatever and get an IP address from my router.
Okay.
But that's the difference between TUN and tap. And then I'm not familiar with the VIO interface that VMM uses currently.
Okay. Well, maybe if somebody else has a different answer for OpenBSD specific,
we'll have to,
let us know. We'll pass.
As more goes forward, maybe we can get some more interviews about VMM as well.
Yeah, that would be cool. Okay, next up is Andrew. He said, I've been a Linux user for a few years now, bear with me please, and can fairly confidently navigate distro listings to find out which ones are doing something truly innovative or distinctive and which ones are simply convenience respins to speak. However, in the BSD world, I'm still at a bit of loss and was wondering if you could enlighten me. Why would you use FreeBSD over OpenBSD? Why would you choose Net over Dragonfly? Does GhostBSD have anything over PCBSD? What I'm looking for is to say use XBSD for Y purpose, and if they're a complete operating system each, where do they share common efforts? Kernel level, review of external projects code, packaging, is each variant in any way compatible with each other? And ultimately, what's the entry flavor that would give the best groundings for a newcomer to BSD? For me in Linux, it was a progression from Ubuntu to Ubuntu Server to CentOS to Arch. What would be a cogent BSD progression? Many thanks. And he also said, I said BSD flavors, but what's the official terminology?
So that's a lot of different questions. So starting at the top with, your basic BSDs are FreeBSD, NetBSD, and OpenBSD. And then Dragonfly is the only one that's actually really a fork. And then
FreeBSD.
Yeah, and then GhostBSD and PCBSD are both kind of, your convenience respin flavor things of FreeBSD. Ghost focusing on GNOME, and PCBSD was focusing on KDE, but it has like 100 window managers to pick from, so whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Well, now it's Lumina, our own window manager. So, yeah.
As far as why purpose goes, all three of any of the BSDs can basically do any purpose you want them to do. FreeBSD has certain advantages for storage with, more mature support for ZFS and so on. And obviously that's inherited by PCBSD and so on. It's really a personal preference thing. You can do anything on any of the BSDs in the end.
So the historical thing's always been FreeBSD, focus on, I guess, performance and compatibility, and runs
and x86
a whole bunch
servers
of things everywhere. Yeah. OpenBSD, security focus, no binary blobs. I mean, that historically. And the net runs on everything, so including the weird
old Japanese phones, whatever you want to run. Yeah. And the Dragonflies was experimenting with, message passing, clustering, that kind of thing. They have a very different networking stack and, the file system and so on. And it's all based on the idea of getting towards clustering and dealing with SMP in a different way.
Okay.
But yeah.
Hope we at least answered. Yeah. Gave you some basic foundation
for his opening up with something like Ubuntu. I would say PCBSD, and then the transition to any
FreeBSD vanilla. And then,
if you want to go to Arch, I guess that's maybe kind of OpenBSD. I don't know.
I don't know. Let's not be a one-to-one, but
the end of my progression is FreeBSD. But everybody has their own taste, and they can do whatever they want.
Okay, so last up is Brent. He asks about Wi-Fi. He says, great show. I would love for Allan to give a tutorial on Wi-Fi. It's the only thing holding me back from using FreeBSD daily. I've tried 3 different Wi-Fi, URTWN, RSU, and BWN, read all the man pages and all kinds of different tutorials on the internet. Still can't seem to connect. Thanks from a podcast listener.
Yeah, so after talking to him back and forth on email, he got the URTWN to work. He was missing one of the settings in WPA-supplicant.conf. He wasn't turning on WPA PSK or something. He's putting in the password but not setting which crypto type, and so it was, I guess, attempting web or something.
That's why you would use PCBSD, because the GUI would have done
yes, so even if you're using vanilla FreeBSD, I highly recommend you install the PCBSD QT tools or whatever it's called to get that wireless connection manager, because it's very nice and it works.
Yes. Nobody likes doing WPA sub.
Yeah. Really also, the RUN. A bunch of the little USB devices are quite popular, but yeah, none of the Broadcom stuff is very good. And
Okay.
I doubt that's going to get any better with the recent news that apparently Broadcom is going to stop making Wi-Fi chips.
Well, there you go.
Also, interesting news.
they'll go away now.
The URTWN driver apparently may be getting support for 802.11n very soon. I saw some chatter going on about that work being done.
Okay.
But yes, luckily we were able to get Brent's Wi-Fi working with
Fantastic.
the pointer
Okay,
at
well, that was
WPA
the-
Supplicant.
Yeah. So that was the end of our feedback and questions. So, of course, appreciate you guys sticking with us this week. We had quite a full show. So, of course, the usual closer disclaimer here, send everything over to feedback@bsdnow.tv.
Yep.
So if you have questions, comments, show ideas, topics, or maybe a story you want mentioned, send it over there. That's the only place we monitor. We may not write you back right away, but we'll try and mention it in a show if we can get it in there. So we appreciate it. Keep sending stuff, sending stories. We
Yep. Just, send us everything you want us to know. And
That's good.
Yeah. And we're working on getting more interviews too. So thanks.
Great. So, of course, we'll see you guys same time next week. Thanks, and have a good one.